I was really excited and disturbed, honestly, to see a certain interaction between journalist Sam Hussein, who's been on the show before. He interrupted, or he asked a question. He and Max Blumenthal both posed questions to Bloody Blinken, the Secretary of State, the outgoing Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. And the response to that from the security was a little bit scary. And then on top of that, the response to that from some corporate media was just as scary. So we're going to bring in Sam. He's going to tell us what happened. Then we're going to watch the clip and talk about Palestine, Gaza, the Biden administration, and media complicity and genocide. So welcome, Sam.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Of course.
And you probably know more about the media coverage than I do.
Oh, well, yeah. Why don't you tell us, before we play this video that's gone kind of viral, set up what happened here, where you were, why you were there, what the context was.
It's at the State Department briefing room. The immediate context is that Blinken, who hasn't been in there in about a year, finally deigned to come on an hour's notice to pontificate about how glorious he thinks the free press is, and to do a victory lap about what he thinks how great U.S. foreign policy is. And I tried to ask pointed, tough, timely questions. And Max Blumenthal interjected before I did and made his series of questions and comments. The overall context is that I've gone to the State Department fairly regularly for several years. They have made a habit of avoiding calling on me, but occasionally they have. And over the last several months, they've completely blackballed me, not calling me at all. I'm going to be releasing a tape on this tomorrow, likely, of Matthew Miller outright telling me that he has no intention of calling on me.
I don't really have much more to say to you, again, after the way you interrupted my briefing last time.
So there's a policy of not calling on you?
I have a policy on not calling people who interrupt other people's questions to make accusations against me. Yeah, very much so.
So you have a policy of not calling on me?
It would apply to anyone who comes in and when somebody else is asking a question starts lobbing accusations against me.
There have been other people. I wasn't lobbing accusations. I was making an obvious observation, and you know it's an obvious observation, and it's scandalous that you would blackball a journalist that way.
So this is set policy, so I didn't mean to get hauled out of there. I meant to try to pointedly ask timely questions, and I did so a couple of times before the tape that you're probably going to show shows. Like I asked, why do you refuse to acknowledge the Geneva Conventions applying to Gaza? That's U.S. policy. U.S. policy does not recognize the Geneva Conventions as applying to the Palestinians. It's utterly scandalous. The U.S. public is totally unaware of this, and they don't want me asking a question like that to Blinken.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's take a look at this. And was this during, you interrupted him, a lot of people said? Is this true that this was an interruption? It was not during a question and answer period? Not that I care. I'm just curious about how okay.
He was filibustering. I mean, he was making he was making a speech in what was supposed to be a press conference.
Right. But Sam, I mean, obviously people care a lot about norms and conventions, which is why they support genocide and breaking the Leahy law and killing children. So they're real sticklers. So, all right, let's take a look at this clip of you trying to ask some questions.
Miller has explicitly told me he will not answer my questions. I'm justified in what I'm doing.
I have no greater pleasure in this job than crossing off a list I carry in my pocket, the names of those who have been arbitrarily detained and unfairly held hostage, unjustly held hostage, and bringing them home, returning them to their families, returning them to their loved ones. Finally, I just wanted to share this morning.
Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Answer a damn question.
I look
Do you know
forward to
about the
answering
Hannibal
questions in
Directive?
minutes.
Do you know about Israel's nuclear weapons? Everybody from the ICJ. I was sitting here quietly, and now I'm being manhandled by 2 or 3 people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I am asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions, and so I'm asking questions.
Please, sir, respect the process. We'll have an opportunity to take questions in a few minutes.
Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please, sir, respect the process. Thank you.
Oh, respect the process. Respect the process. Well, everybody from Amnesty International, from Amnesty International to the ICJ saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal, why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague?
Wow. Okay. So, did you expect that you would get like manhandled and dragged out of there?
No, I didn't. The closest thing that I've done to this is when during the Trump administration, they brought in Elliot Abrams. And I tried to ask a series of questions to Elliot Abrams, and they had a guy off camera. It was very skillful, pointing to other reporters to get them to chime in and ask tough questions. And so I kept chiming in questions and they kept ignoring them. I expected something like that to happen. But they escalated and started, and you can tell it's Matt Miller off to the side, getting the so-called security people, sicking them on me.
Right.
And then after, I got all, they handcuffed me in the hallway. They hurt my wrist. They hurt my shoulder. They took me out of there the long way around. So I guess they could push me around more. It was all very thuggish.
Wow.
And then they wouldn't even give me their names. The guy at the end of the process, I ended up taking his picture, when I tried to, see what his name was, he hid that. So it was just total, mafioso stuff. I saw another version of the video that you just showed, and it seems to indicate that it was Matt Miller, right? He's going off to the side and waving them in and all of that.
He gets to make lots of speeches. Let him answer some questions. Let him answer some questions instead of making another speech every day.
Sir, would you like to be escorted out?
Go away.
You don't have the responsibility to tell me where to go. Do you want to be escorted out or not?
I want him to answer questions.
Okay, then let's be quiet.
I'm a journalist.
I look forward to answering questions in a minute.
I'm a journalist. I'm not a potted plant.
So even though Blinken is standing there in front of the podium saying, I'll be happy to take any questions, because I'm so open-minded and I love a free press so much. The bottom line is they would rather have the visual of me being carried out of there rather than subject Blinken to having to answer some of my questions. For example, before this video started, I said, when he made some reference to international law, I said, well, why don't you recognize the Geneva Conventions as applying to the Palestinians? Scandalous that they don't do that. I asked that several times. It's my pinned tweet, is a sort of a montage of my questioning the State Department, and they deceive in every which way on that question, because it would be so scandalous for them to just say, yeah, the Geneva Conventions apply to everybody, but they don't apply to the Palestinians. Gaza can go to hell. They can't say that. And it basically is the legal construct or legal just phony justification to basically turn Gaza into a free fire zone. Another journalist picked up on my questioning several months ago, and he caught Blinken. He was just happened to pass Blinken, or maybe he was doing a bit of a stakeout in the halls of the State Department, Liam Cosgrove. And he actually asked Blinken why you won't recognize the Geneva Conventions applying to the Palestinians. And Blinken's response was, is this on the record? And when Cosgrove said, yeah, it's on the record, and he's like, no answer. So they don't want this. They don't want to talk about the ways in which they are assaulting international law and any sense of international decency in this process. So that's why they got to haul me out. They would rather have the visual of me being hauled out of there than having to forced to answer serious questions like that.
What is happening in Gaza is remarkable and disturbing. Then the war on journalists in Gaza is remarkable and disturbing. And then this isn't comparable, obviously, what happened to you, but I think it's kind of the domestic front of this same war. So you're not allowed to highlight the criminality of the United States or the criminality of Israel that the United States government obviously enables. But I think another disgusting thing that we saw here is the way that certain people in the media rallied to the defense of security of Blinken and were critical of you and Max Blumenthal. And we'll show the Max clip later. But let's just take a look at how you and Max Blumenthal were presented by CNN.
Heard he was repeatedly interrupted by some cringeworthy heckling by activists. I mean, we were both sitting here pretty stunned, frankly. This is supposed to be a press conference with a room of journalists. Those were activists who were interrupting the Secretary of State when he initially was thanking the press and talking about the Israeli-Hamas deal.
Yeah, I think it's really surprising. A lot of our viewers will have seen protests on Capitol Hill, for example, during confirmation hearings, but it's very rare for something like that to happen at the State Department. I'm over there all the time in that briefing room, and you need to have a reason to be at the State Department. You need to have an appointment. You need to have press accreditation to come and go. So it's unclear who those people were. So I think there's a real security.
So, okay, to be fair, this guy is only at CNN, and it's not like he has a lot of resources or time on his hands or a staff. So he couldn't be bothered to, like go on Twitter and maybe look and see that it was Max Blumenthal and Sam Husseini, which lots of people were tweeting about, obviously.
Question there. Allow me to be cheesy for a moment. This is a testament to American democracy and the way that American administrations approach their press rooms. They give accreditation to a wide number of journalists, and increasingly.
Okay, again, Blinken news conference repeatedly interrupted by man asking questions about U.S. policy in Gaza. First of all, how dare you? How dare you interrupt the Secretary of State as he's talking with irrelevant questions about something that's totally unrelated to his job, which is U.S. policy in Gaza.
What I would call less mainstream journalists, more opinion journalists.
Wait, I thought you were just a random man. So it's now your crime is not that you're not a journalist, you're just an opinion journalist. That's what makes you an inappropriate person to be in that room. So let us praise, and feel free to interject whenever you want to. But part of the reason, by the way, I want to do the stream, and I was honestly for like my own mental well-being, because I was so angry about this. I mean, I was really disturbed by the footage of you, and then I was just so disturbed by things like this. How dare these people come on CNN and try to portray it as a sign of democracy that they allow journalists in there. Journalists, even journalists who aren't totally mainstream. Like, that is just so generous of these people to let in the riffraff like you and me, Sammy. I haven't been there, but I'm sure if I were there, I'd be considered, a random woman or an opinionated journalist.
Yeah, I mean, part of what I think is hilarious is this alleged contrast between mainstream and opinion, as if virtually all mainstream journalists aren't just spouting their partisan talking points.
100%.
Virtually no grounding in actual facts or, researching something or anything like that. So I think that's kind of rich.
I always think that the journalists who pretend to have no ideology are actually the most dangerous ones, because then people kind of let down their guard and they think that they're reading fact and not opinion, when every single factual article from the New York Times is opinion-based and serves an agenda.
That's part of the reason that I keep going back to core facts that get ignored by the establishment.
Right.
Does Israel have nuclear weapons? Oh, you can't acknowledge that Israel has nuclear weapons. Maybe something's really demented about your worldview. Do you know about the Hannibal Directive? I asked Matt Miller months ago about the Hannibal Directive. He pretended not to know about it. And then the news conference just keeps going, and he calls on some favorite journalist and change the topic. And that's supposed to be the end of the story, and then he doesn't call on me for another month. If the State Department isn't acknowledging the Hannibal Directive, then what the hell is, while they're pontificating about how important U.S. and other lives of the captives are, then that's a garbage system.
Right.
So that's why I keep going back to these core facts, and that's what I try to do in the questions that I outline. I also think, they know full well who Max Blumenthal and Sam Husseini are. They just don't want to say our names.
Of course, yeah.
They know that half their listeners will Google our names, and they'll bail out of their system.
Right. Also, but which is it? Like, they don't know who you are, right? You're a random man, or you're a kind of a persona non grata journalist, right? Yeah. Like, just pick a narrative. But they're so dishonest that their lies kind of contradict themselves. Okay, let's keep playing more.
So I'm always amazed by, whenever I go to these different press rooms, about who's actually sitting there. It's not just Americans. It's people from all over the world, from Turkey, from China, from South Korea, who get to ask questions of people like Matt Miller at the State Department or Karine Jean-Pierre at the White House. And
wow, that is so amazing. I cannot believe that our country lets in foreigners into press briefings. I mean, I'm waiting them for be like, they even let, like, you don't even have to be a white man, property owner. They still let you in there.
So there's a relatively open policy for now.
So a relatively open policy for now. He's saying, suggesting that, it's going to change with Trump. But obviously, if this happened under Trump, these same journalists who are, spelling over how amazing the our media system is here, would be calling it out as authoritarian, fascist, the end of democracy, the end of a free press.
Yeah, maybe I should have waited a week, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And then I wanted to take a look at, okay, here we go. Aaron Rupar, here's how he tweeted about what happened. Blinken's press briefing is interrupted by a demonstrator. He's having a hard time getting through his opening statements without being interrupted by journalist/demonstrator. Okay, so you get promoted, Sammy, because he calls you a journalist/demonstrator, which I guess is an upgrade, right? And then at one point, someone actually said to Aaron, like, why are you calling him a demonstrator, not a journalist? And he goes, I didn't say he was not a journalist, as if he should get credit for not saying demonstrator who is not a journalist.
Yeah, I don't know. Is he a journalist?
No, I mean, he's just to be fair, he's a clipper. That's what he does. He clips. Yeah. He clips media, which is useful. But the problem is he clips media pretending that he's being objective and just capturing things, and is an actual absolute diehard Biden ideologue who loves Biden. Yeah.
Right. And that's what the system, the way that it's established, recognizes as alleged journalism in part. So I am trying to set up a structure whereby officials are held accountable and that you have an opportunity to ask serious questions. And they have a whole series of mechanisms to prevent that from happening. And that's what is shown here today. So when I try to push the envelope to force that to happen, then it's like, oh, you're a demonstrator. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's it's all access journalism. And if you don't have access, if you're not willing to, water down any criticism to such a pathetic degree that, you're just being a complete flack, then you're not, you're going to have very, very limited access. And that's the way that they want to set it up. And it's basically an assault on the First Amendment. And this is one manifestation of it. I'm kind of jealous of Max because, he came in there prepared to just, articulate something. And I went in there with a different strategy of just trying to.
You had actual questions.
Try to ask targeted little questions.
I want to show another tweet by, and this is a tweet that I'm not joking, I actually thought was a joke. It's by Aaron David Miller, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment. He's the host of Carnegie Connects and former State Department analyst, advisor, negotiator in Republican and Democratic administrations. What did he have to say about this? In 27 years at State, never seen a situation where a Secretary of State, a caring, compassionate man, is heckled in his own building by a heckler yelling, "Why aren't you in The Hague?" A new low in civility and discourse. Oh, scroll down. There's a comment from Bradley Bloom. He's objectively guilty of facilitating war crimes. What he's like personally is irrelevant. It's not his building. It's ours. That you don't describe the crimes as a new low in civility and discourse, but rather a credentialed reporter asking a question speaks to who you are.
That's great.
Yeah. Well said, Brad. So, so what is your response to this, distinguished gentleman?
I guess progress is being made if he's never seen anything like that before. I've seen some weird antics in the press room. I mean, I've seen other journalists be upset and like storming the door. I didn't get up there and, spew a set of profanities. Everything I said was substantial about policy, accusing him of war crimes and so on. So maybe he needs to, learn about international law or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, he did work at the State Department, so he's probably sensitive about this stuff.